Hey, mamas, and welcome back to another Knit and Tell Friday here on the Knit Your Stress Away podcast. This is your time to sit back, grab your yarn, and join me for just a little chat about all the things knitting, maybe reading what's on my needles this week, and just some tips and tricks that I pick up along the way. So today I have a really useful knitting tip for you, and then also an update on what I'm reading, and a little spoiler alert. It's still the same book. So if you've been around for the last few Knit and Tell Fridays, you might remember what it is. Let's get into it. Welcome to Knit Your Stress Away. Are you a mom who feels overwhelmed, craving a creative outlet, but unsure where to start or how to fit it into your already packed day? I have dedicated this podcast to help you discover practical, guilt-free self-care strategies through the calming practice of knitting. I'll help you break free from the overwhelm, quiet the noise and comparison of social media, empowering you to pick up your knitting needles instead and embrace moments of rest, creativity, and mindfulness. Hi, I'm Nadine, a mom, wife, and passionate knitter. I first learned to knit as a teenager from my grandmother back in Germany, but for some reason, I put my needles down in my 20s. It wasn't until 2020, when everyone was searching for ways to ease the anxiety of the unknown, that I picked knitting back up, and something amazing happened. I found peace and joy in the cozy, calming rhythm of knitting, and now I'm so excited to share my practical tips and habits with you so you can reclaim your time, recharge, and rediscover the things that bring you happiness. It's time to ditch the endless scroll on social media and focus on what truly matters, your well-being. So if you're ready to take control of your stress, ditch overwhelm and social media comparison, rekindle your creativity, and recharge with a hobby you love, this podcast will guide you every step of the way. Take a deep breath, grab your knitting needles, and let's start creating a life with less stress and more joy, one stitch at a time. And here we are back on another Friday. Can you believe how fast these weeks are flying by?Maybe this is just me, but I'm like, wow, I can't believe it's Friday again. And here we are. So I hope, let me just say this real quick. I hope you guys are enjoying these little short Friday episodes. They are meant to be listened to on a walk, or maybe, when you are actually working on your own knitting project, and they're supposed to just be a little entertaining, but also educational, and not as long as the Tuesday episodes where we go a little bit deeper into something, that's really helpful to you. Not to say that these tips aren't helpful to you, but this is more of a conversation than anything else. And I would love to have you over in the Knitting Mamas Facebook community, where we can then actually talk about these things and have a real conversation with other members and, with me. So I hope I find you over there at some point. I'm going to pop the link, of course, into the show notes, but you can type in theknittingmamas.com/group and hop in over to our Facebook community. All right, so let's get started with today's tip. Today, I want to talk to you really quickly about making a gauge swatch for accurate measurements. Now, I know for those of you who have been knitting, they may have heard that this is something that you're supposed to do, make a swatch, but it can feel like an extra step that may not be necessary. So I've heard this from so many people in the knitting community. It's like, no, I don't need to do that because it's just, I just want to get to the thing. And for my complete beginners, or those of you who are not even a complete beginner, I so love that you listen to this podcast, because I am here to show you that knitting is the thing that is missing in your life. If feeling overwhelmed, stretched into all different directions, and feeling like you just never have the time to sit down, and you have a little bit of a creative, knack, knitting is the thing. And we get into it in other episodes, but let me just tell you that knitting a gauge swatch, what that actually is. So what it means is you are creating a small little, usually a square or rectangle, most times it's a square, of the stitch that you are going to create in the project that you're about to start. And you are using the same needles, obviously, that are in the pattern that are recommended, and also the same yarn that you're going to use. And the reason for this is that you are going to be able to measure the little square that you create and compare it to the gauge that the pattern indicates. Meaning, if it meets the gauge, then you are very likely to actually knit the piece in the size that you're looking at, meaning it's going to fit. And if you skip this step, you are running the risk of potentially not having a piece that fits, or you might find out that this piece won't fit like in the middle of knitting your project, but then it might be too late. Well, I don't think it's ever too late with knitting because you can always go backwards. You can, what we call frog it, right? You can just rip it. But do you want to do that? Like, personally, I don't. I always hate the idea of having to start over with the same project. Usually, when something does happen and I realize, oh my gosh, can't continue this way. I have to get rid of this. I have to start this over. I throw it in a corner and I do something else. Like I cast on a different project. So that's generally how that works for me, which is why, I've learned the hard way that making a gauge swatch is actually totally worth it. So if you don't want to spend hours on a project only to find out it doesn't fit because it's either too big or too small, you need to knit your little gauge swatch. And normally it takes maybe 10 minutes, maybe 15 minutes. It depends on the yarn. If it's a really thin yarn, of course, it'll take a bit longer. But normally what you're looking for it's pretty standard across all patterns, as far as I know. The square will have to be just slightly bigger than 4 by 4 inches because that's usually the measuring, I guess, gauge that the patterns require. And and I'm actually going to link this up too. I didn't even think about it, but there's these really cool rulers that you can get. They're a couple dollars on Amazon that are already shaped in a square, and they have this hole that is 4 by 4. And you can just literally lay this little ruler over your knitted square, and you can then count the rows and the stitches that you have within that square. And then you compare it to your pattern, which will say gauge for 4 by 4 needs to be, let's say, 10 rows and 5 stitches or whatever. I just totally made that up. I don't even know if that would look right. But it will give you literally how many rows and how many stitches you need to meet inside of that little square. And if you are over or under that gauge, then you're going to have to adjust either your needle size or your tension. And that's something that we can talk about at another time. Obviously, then you're going to have to adjust a little bit, and that might be a little bit tricky, but it's better to know that before you start your project than to know it when you're in the middle of it, or even worse, when you're done and you're like, wow, okay, this is really small. There are a few projects where this does not matter as much. For example, a scarf, like an infinity scarf or just a regular long scarf or a blanket. It would probably not matter that much there either. It's not super important for a triangle scarf, but I do believe if the gauge is way off, then you might want to reconsider either the yarn choice or your needle choice, because, you don't want even those pieces that aren't necessarily having to fit, but you don't want them to be too small or way too big. But a blanket, I mean, really, who cares? So if that's bigger, I think even better. I think one more thing about why I think a gauge swatch is an advantage to do, even though you'll hear it from a ton of people, you'll see it online on social media. It's going to be like, no, I'm not doing that. Don't listen, just knit your gauge swatch. But it's also really cool if it's a new yarn that you're using, you actually familiarize yourself with the feel of it. And you can see if, for some reason, maybe you knit a little tighter with it or a little too loose, and you can kind of adjust before you start the real project. So really the way to look at it is like, testing a recipe before you actually serve the meal to people and testing it for yourself. So that prep work goes a long way, and it's so, so worth it. So let's talk about what's on my needles this week. I'm actually still working on the Kyla sweater. And it's funny because I think I called it Kayla sweater last time, but I did link it up the correct way in the show notes. So just so you know, in case I said it differently, it came to me after I recorded the episode. I was like, wait a minute, I don't think that was right. So Kyla sweater from Happy Love Co. I'm going to link it up again because it's just so fun and so cute. And I just can't even wait for it to be done. I also think it's the perfect time right now to get this done because it's a sweater, but it's made from cotton. So it has long sleeves, but it's not really thick. So it's really going to be nice for the fall time. And it's probably going to be really fun under, like a denim jacket. I think it's going to be real cute because it has those stripes. So take a look at it. If you didn't listen to the last episode, I went a little bit more into detail what it looks like. Currently, I'm about to finish the front, which I had just started last time, I believe. So actually made some progress. But anything compared to the 350 stitches per row on my landscapes shawl that I just finished a couple weeks ago is nothing. I mean, just it's like 40 stitches per row, maybe. So it flies off the needle. It's really cool. And then all I have to do is the 2 sleeves, which are knitted separately, of course, in rectangles. And then you just kind of, they're going to look like a tube. You seam them together and then they get seamed and attached to the body, which also gets seamed together, of course. That is actually something fun that I could make a YouTube video about because it's such a visual thing to seam something together. But if you want to check out the YouTube beginner playlist that I have, I do seam something on there. There's one video where I'm seaming, but it's only a pair of leg warmers that I made for my daughter a couple of years ago. But I'm showing you how that actually works. So that's kind of a cool thing to do. And I don't have the link ready right now as I'm looking here at my notes, but I will put the link in the show notes for that as well. So and I'm definitely going to keep you posted on my sweater and how it's coming along. As a matter of fact, I'm going to post a picture of it inside of the Facebook community. So be sure to hop on over there, theknittingmamas.com/group. And speaking of updates and keeping you updated, I'm still reading The Woman in the Window. I know. It's still the same book. It's been a little busy, which is not a bad thing at all. It's been a little busy with my kids' school, and we're adjusting to the new school year, and I have 2 high schoolers now, which is a lot. But good news, after I'm done recording this, I'm actually going to do a 30-minute reading time with my kids, and I'm going to get a couple of chapters in. And this book is actually picking up, and it's getting really good. So I think it's going to be worth it. It was a little different for me to get into the writing style. It was a bit choppy at first, but I'm finally in it, and I can't wait for the next twist. So it's pretty crazy. So go check it out, putting the link in the show notes as well. And I would love to have chats about books too. I can never really decide, do I want to pick up my knitting or do I want to pick up a book? So I have to divide my time between the two because I equally love them. And one of them, gets me more excited. The other one chills me out a bit more. So it kind of depends on that too, what I need in the moment. So just for you to keep in mind. But let me know over in the Facebook group, what are you currently reading? I'm going to actually throw up a post where you can just comment underneath. Can't wait to hear what you're reading. And before I wrap up, here is what I want you to do as well as you are going to join the Facebook group or hop on over and comment on some posts. If you haven't joined one of our Knit and Chill Circle events yet, I would love for you to come and hang out with us. Our next one is on October 16th. It happens at 1 p.m. EST. And it's such a fun, low-pressure space to bring your knitting, ask your questions, or just hang out with other mamas who are into knitting just like you or who are just starting to knit just like you. And you'll find it's actually pinned in the Facebook group. So when you come in there, you'll see at the top the Knit and Chill Circle. If you can't make it to this one, we do them every month, but I highly encourage you to hop over in the Facebook group and then you can just RSVP to that event so you don't miss out and don't miss it. All right, friends, that is all for today's Knit and Tell Friday. Don't forget to swatch before your next project. I can't wait to hear your take on that, by the way, because it's slightly controversial in the knitting community. And I'll catch you on our next regular episode, which happens on Tuesday, of course. And of course, in the Facebook group. Until then, happy knitting. Let me know if you have any questions, if there's ever anything that I can answer on this podcast. I would love to. Just shoot me a message inside the Facebook group and I will talk to you soon. Have a wonderful weekend. Thanks so much for hanging out with me on today's episode. I hope you're walking away with a bit more inspiration and a few ideas to make your self-care a priority. If today's chat gave you a little boost, I'd love it if you could leave a 5-star review on iTunes. This helps other moms discover the podcast and start finding more calm and creativity in their day as well. And don't forget to join us over in the Knitting Mamas community on Facebook by going to theknittingmamas.com/group. Thanks again, and remember, you deserve time for yourself to recharge and feel your best. Catch you next time on the Knit the Stress Away podcast.